If you like the content and willing to support my effort, then please subscribe to my channel, give it a like and share it with everyone. Thank you. Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to analyze the chess game from the movie Chhichhore, directed by Nitesh Tiwari. In the movie, the game was played between Baldev Yadav aka Bevda from Hostel 4, played by Saharsh Kumar Shukla, and Bioreader from Hostel 3, played by Anuj Aluwalia. Bevda was white and Bioreader was black. Well, the actual game that they used in this film is a famous game between former world champion Garry Kasparov and Anatoly Karpov from the World Championship match of 1990, round 20. The great thing is that they actually modified this game a little bit towards the end and presented it in this film. Was it better or worse? Let that be a surprise for a while. But I just want to say that it was really a pleasure to experience a game of such level with this amount of suspense in a Bollywood movie. It is really a hard job to present a game of chess along with a basketball match and a relay race, which have speed, excitement, and adrenaline rush by default. After watching this analysis, including the modification, I hope that you're really going to appreciate this movie a little bit more that you have done previously. However, before starting, this video is dedicated to one of my favorite actors, Sushant Singh Rajput, who played the character of Anni in this film. Sushant was a sport enthusiast and more importantly, he was keenly interested in chess. He had a bucket list of 50 wishes that he wanted to fulfill within his lifetime, one of which being to play chess with a champion. I love playing chess, so I chose this as a medium to show my respect. This is my tribute to Sushant Singh Rajput. With this in mind, let us dive into the game. So, Bevda begins the game with e4 and Bioreader replies with e5, the king's pawn opening. The game continues with knight f3 attacking this pawn, knight c6 defending this pawn, and bishop b5, the royal opes on the board. Well, the scheme is that white is willing to capture this knight so that he can capture this pawn on e5 because this knight won't be there to defend this e5 pawn. To defend this, black goes for a6, the Morphy defense, named after the developer Paul Morphy. And the idea is that if bishop captures this knight, d into c6 and knight into e5 capturing this pawn, black can go for queen d4, forking this knight and this pawn. So after knight f3, queen into e4 with a check, winning back this pawn. This is known as the exchange variation, but in the actual game we see that Bevda goes for bishop a4, the closed variation. Black continues developing with knight f6, attacking this pawn. White castles and he does not bother about this pawn because if say knight into e4, then white can simply play rook e1, knight c5, bishop into c6, d into c6, and knight into e5, winning back this pawn with the threat of a deadly attack onto the queen because of this discovered check. So instead of capturing this pawn, black goes for bishop e7, taking care of this threat and at the same time making a nice little room for the king to castle. Rook e1, taking the control of this e file, b5, bishop b3, and d6, activating the light square bishop. Well, the idea is that white is willing to play d4, taking the control of the center, and this knight will be there to defend the d4 pawn. So black is willing to activate his bishop so that he can play bishop g4, creating a pin onto this diagonal, pinning this knight against the queen so that this knight will be inactive and he won't be able to defend the d4 pawn. White is gonna play d4 anyway, so he plays c3, preparing for d4. Black castles and h3, preventing the idea of bishop g4. So bishop b7, fianchettoing this bishop onto the long diagonal by bringing it to the a8 h1 diagonal, and this is known as the Zaitsev variation, which is developed by Karpov's trainer Grandmaster Igor Zaitsev. And finally d4 by white, and rook e8, taking control of the e5. And with this we come to more or less an end to the opening, and both the sides are ready to jump to the middle game. Well, black has activity on the queen side, and white is willing to bring all his artilleries to the king side. So from this point, white will try to bring all his pieces to the king side and try to break the castle of black, and black will try to activate and charge white by creating an attack onto the queen side. So white begins with knight b d2. The idea is bringing this knight to f1 and g3 and create an attack onto the king side. And black plays a very good move, which is bishop f8. With this, black has prevented the idea of knight f1 and g3 because now this knight has to be there in order to protect the e4 pawn. Because suppose at this point white goes knight f1, then black will simply go for ed, cd, knight a5, bishop c2 and knight e4, taking or capturing this e4 pawn, and black cannot do anything. And as the knight is paralyzed at this point, this bishop is also inactive and this rook is also paralyzed. So in order to activate this queen side, white plays a4. He is planning to bring this bishop to c2 and activate his rook by bringing it to a3 and e3 or g3, maybe attacking the king side. Now h6 by black. Black is saying that I'm absolutely okay, you just continue your development, and bishop c2 going according to the plan. Ed, cd and knight b4, bringing this knight to this nice square in order to trade off some pieces. But this bishop is important in order to protect this e4 pawn, so that white can activate the knight and bring it to the f1 and g3 square. So it is not good for white to exchange the pieces, so he plays bishop b1, protecting this bishop. C5 and d5. Now this bishop is paralyzed for a long time because of these two pawns on the center looking very strong, and this bishop is not going to see the daylight in near future. So knight d7 by black. Black is willing to activate his king side by playing f5, rook a3, again going according to the plan, and f5, rook a e3. White has achieved his goal that he has planned before, and knight f6, putting pressure onto the e4 pawn. And white plays knight h2, a brilliant plan by white. He is willing to exchange these pawns so that white can play rook g3, pin this pawn against the king, and he is willing to bring his knight on g4 and take this pawn on h6, because this pawn won't be there to protect this h6 pawn, because this will be pinned if the rook is on g3. And to prevent that, black plays a brilliant move, which is king h8, because he is not willing to create a pin onto the g file. And white plays another good move, which is b3. And the idea is that black has prevented one pin against the rook, so white is willing to create another pin against the bishop. What a game this is. However, the game continues with ba, c4, planning to bring this knight to d3, and bishop b2, again going according to the plan. This bishop is looking dangerous. He's now just a beast onto this long a1 h8 diagonal, putting a lot of pressure onto the g7 pawn and the king on h8. Now black goes for f into e4, knight into e4, and knight f into d5, winning a pawn. But white right now is really not interested in losing or winning a pawn. White simply plays rook g3. This bishop, this knight, and this rook is now ready to attack the king side. White is looking very good here. Rook e6 here, taking care of this h6 pawn, and knight g4 going according to the plan. And black plays rook e8. Not a good move at all. Black should have gone for knight d3, bishop into d3, c into d3, queen into d3, and queen e7, taking care of this g7 pawn. That would have much better in this position. So instead black goes for queen e8, probably to bring it to the g6 square maybe, or maybe f7, but it doesn't look good. It is a very sharp position at this moment, and a weak move like queen e8 does not look good from black. However, knight h6 anyway. So this pawn cannot capture back this knight. Also, the fun fact is that this rook on e6 even cannot capture this knight, because suppose rook into h6, then knight into d6 is coming, because he is creating a fork onto the queen and this bishop. If rook into d6, then white will simply go for checkmating black with bishop into g7 check, bishop into g7, rook into e8 check, rook into e8, queen h5 check, rook h6, queen takes on e8 check, bishop f8, and queen into f8 checkmate. So it is not actually possible for black to capture this knight here, so he goes for attacking this bishop by playing c3. And here white sacrifices his bishop. He is not even bothered about this bishop here, and he simply plays knight f5, putting a lot of pressure onto the g7 pawn, and he simply sacrifices his bishop. Black plays c into b2, and we can see in the movie that bioreader is really happy here. He's really confident after capturing this bishop, totally ignoring the attack onto the king side. And white goes for queen g4. Black plays a really desperate move, bishop c8, with the hope of, if knight takes g7, black can go for rook into e4, a double attack onto the queen. Instead, white simply goes for queen h4 check. So the only move of black here is sacrificing his rook by playing rook h6, preventing this check onto the h file. Knight into h6, g into h6, and king h2, preventing any further possibility of queen taking the rook and giving a check to the king on g1 square. Now white is willing to give a threat to pick up this queen by playing rook g8, king into g8, and knight to f6, forking this king and this queen. So black has to take care of this f6 square. In order to do that, he plays queen e5, but now knight g5, threatening knight f7 checkmate. So now queen f6 taking care of this f7 square, and rook e8 by white here. Now black plays bishop f5 to attack the b1 bishop, along with a discovered attack on the e8 rook. And here white has a beautiful mating pattern. If you want to try it by yourself, you can just pause this video right now and try to find the best move for white here. Well, white will begin the sequence with knight f7 check, queen into f7, queen into h6 check, bishop h7, rook into a8, knight f6, rook into f8 check, queen into f8, queen into f8 check, and anything like knight g8, it is mate in one by rook g7 checkmate. So that is the mating pattern. It is absolutely winning for white here. But the thing is that in the actual game, we see that Bevda does not go for knight into f7. And the fun fact is that even Garry Kasparov did not go for this knight into f7 move. Instead, he actually went for a very beautiful move that we also see in the movie Chhichhore. Queen into h6 check, sacrificing his queen here. And we can see that Bevda's friend and his opponent at the same time, the bioreader, is totally amazed by this fact that he's actually sacrificed a whole queen. And black simply goes for queen into h6, picking up this queen. White simply goes for knight f7 check, a royal fork, forking this king and this queen at the same time. So king h7 and bishop into f5 check. The h8 square is protected by the knight. These three squares are protected by the rook. So the king is under check. He has nowhere to go. So the only move by black is queen g6 to save the check. And here black started feeling really uncomfortable. Now, here comes a moment of surprise that I was talking about. Here comes a modification. So get ready for a surprise here. It is gonna be amazing. In the actual game in the World Championship, Garry Kasparov went for bishop g6, check, picking up this queen, which is no doubt a very good move. But in this position, this is not the best move. Do you know what the best move is? You can try it by yourself, because this is a really nice moment to cherish. You can just pause the video right now and try to find the best move for white here. Well, the idea is really easy. The idea is that white is willing to take this queen on g6 and come back to g3. And that's a checkmate. Let us put it in this way. Suppose white plays rook into g6 and black plays any bad move, say a5. Then rook g3 is a checkmate. The king is under check. These two squares are protected by the knight, and the front three squares are protected by the rook. So this is the checkmate. So in order to save the checkmate, what black needs to do? So this bishop on f5 is ultimately gonna give the check, right? So black has to take care of this bishop only, nothing else. So what is the possible way? The possible way is only this knight at this moment is able to take care of this bishop. So either knight e7 or knight e3, because only these two squares will be able to protect, capture this bishop. Now e7 is protected by the rook, e3 is protected by the pawn. So there is nothing for black to do at this moment, and it is clearly winning for white here. So the best move was not played in a world championship match, but it was actually played in a movie, in a Bollywood movie, which actually shows that they actually put effort in this game. That really shows that they did not take their audience for granted. So white goes for rook into g6, and this scene was really shown in a very grand manner, which actually good. I mean, it should be there. They put some effort onto this single move, a good move, a better move. In the movie, we see that black goes for knight e7. White simply captures this knight by rook into e7 and bishop into e7, and finally rook g3, checkmate. With this, white wins the game, and just before delivering the final blow, Bevda finishes off bioreader by saying that he did two mistakes, one of which being to consider Bevda as drunk, and the second one is that he did not study the game of Kasparov. If he did, then he would know that Bevda would have never sacrificed his queen even if he was drunk. Which is also an important thing to notice. They mentioned the name of the actual player in the movie whose game they have used. It is really rare. Most of the movies, even from Hollywood, do not bother to give the credit to the actual players. Not only that, they really put effort to show a good game of chess in this movie, and in my opinion, this is the best game of chess that I have ever seen in a movie. And again, the video is absolutely for Sushant Singh Rajput, a marvelous actor, a brilliant student, a physics enthusiast, and most importantly, a good human being. Sir, wherever you are, stay happy as you always used to be. With this, I am signing off. See you next time.